According to Javanese mythology, the ancient king needed a signal to summon God and invented the gong. With time, they added metallophones, xylophones, drums, and flutes to create this symphony of sounds. For hundreds of years, this complex blend of musical tones filled the mountains, temples, and cities in the islands of Indonesia.
I believe that our religion can keep us alive. That's my belief. Since our religion is still strong, our art is still there because they are, connected.
Gamelan reflects the culture and the universal belief of the struggle between good and evil.
The evil, the dark, it never dies. It's always there, it always is in existence, and our job is to try to create balance between the positive and the negative.
Community groups play this highly developed and varied music at social gatherings and ceremonies, like this funeral in a rural village.
There's this notion that empty space leaves room for, evil forces, for bad forces to come in and do bad stuff. But if you fill that empty space with beauty, then that leaves no room for evil.
The young men carry the remains of their deceased in this tower called a tier. They twist and twirl it through the street prior to the cremation ceremony to confuse evil spirits. Meanwhile, the interlocking sounds of the gamelan are heard throughout the streets. The music of Indonesia is now moving to a new audience.
These are both the lowest gong. Sometimes they'll use this one, sometimes they'll use this one, depending on the structure of the piece.
Jeremy Grimshaw is a professor at Brigham Young University. He focused his undergraduate studies in percussion, but after studying musicology in graduate school, he realized his passion for a different type of percussion instrument, the gamelan.
It was a great thing for me. I just loved being able to play again with my hands. And the more I got into Balinese music and how it intersects with Balinese culture and Balinese spirituality and daily life, I just became more and more fascinated by it. And so it became something that I had to keep doing.
In the summer of 2008, Grimshaw traveled to Bali to gain a greater knowledge of the gamelan.
This pair of instruments here are the bass section. In fact, all of these 6 instruments here play the bass line, the bass melody, the core melody of a piece.
A gamelan consists of around 30 instruments, all in pairs. While in Bali, Grimshaw experienced the strong connection the Balinese people have with their gamelan music.
I think the thing that's stood out to me is how much music really serves as an offering. It's a way of showing gratitude. It's a way of worship.
Each instrument is made to be slightly out of tune with its partner, producing an acoustic beating between each pair.
And all of the instruments, all of the notes on all of the instruments are that way. You can hear that wave, that wobble to the sound that gives it a kind of shimmer. So when the whole ensemble is playing, you'll hear that. This we have the slowest version of the melody, the lowest version of the melody. And then these instruments have the same notes, but they play a higher version of the melody.
Gamelan is considered to be popular folk music, but Grimshaw says it is more than just folk music. The composition and performance can be just as complicated and intricate as Western symphony music.
And gamelan really isn't thought of that way in Bali. It's considered classical music. It's a very old tradition, and it's a very cultured tradition. But at the same time, just about everybody plays it.
This music reflects the society the people live in. Each musician must work in harmony with one another to find success for the entire group. They call it kotekan.
In kotekan, you can't play the melody by yourself. You can play part of the melody. You play some of the notes, but then the guy next to you plays the other notes. And on their own, neither of those parts sound like a melody. There's something missing from both of them. What happens is when you play them in perfect synchronization with each other, then all of a sudden this beautiful melody emerges.
The same principle is used in almost every aspect of communal life in Bali, from the religious ceremonies to their daily routine, even in the way they grow rice on the mountainsides.
There's it's kind of a shrine at the top of some of these hills, and they call it the water temple. And that's where they meet. They figure out whose field is going to be flooded and whose field is going to be dry, when. And they have to do it exactly right. They have to synchronize it perfectly so that the water is in the right place at the right time, and so that everyone's rice will grow. It applies so directly to the way they make the music. You have to do your part at the right time. You have to fill the space, the sonic space, at the right time, and leave the space empty at the right time. Otherwise, the music won't work. The music won't grow.
In addition to gamelan music, another major passion on the island is kite flying. The ocean winds create a constant and strong breeze, and on any given day, groups of young men launch these huge and brightly decorated kites into the blue sky. To many Balinese, kite flying is more than just a hobby. It is another example of how Kotekan philosophy is used on the island. It takes more than one person to toss a kite like these into the air, so each individual must do his or her job or the kite will not fly. When Grimshaw traveled to Bali, he had the opportunity to take private lessons from his mentor, I Ketut Gede Asnawa, considered to be one of the premier gamelan composers in Bali.
Pa Asnawa is a highly respected musician. He's known throughout Bali as a composer and as a teacher. He taught at one of the conservatories there in Bali for several years before he came to the U.S. So he's a big deal. He's a really big deal.
In addition to learning the technique of the gamelan, Grimshaw's mentor also wants him to share his love for the music.
Well, for me, play the music is pretty much as kind of communicate with the feeling. The feeling, we call it rasa. That's pretty important. Everyone has a feeling. Everyone has emotion, ambition, you know.
With Asnawa's help, Grimshaw orders a custom-built 30-piece set to send back to BYU. First, craftsmen hand-carve the instruments out of jackfruit wood. Then they paint these intricate designs on the side of each instrument in these bright colors.
And so there are color symbolisms. A lot of times you'll see black and white, especially in a checkered pattern, and that represents a balance of good and evil. And then red represents power.
The people believe that the stories and natural floral designs help to ward off evil spirits. That is why they carve every inch of the gamelan, because empty space leaves room for evil to inhabit it.
Black magic and white magic and different kinds of power that are always in conflict.
Emiko Saraswati Susilo grew up in Bali learning and playing gamelan music. After obtaining a degree from UCLA, she returned to Indonesia to teach Balinese dance to children.
There's a lot of philosophy in the dance and in the music. The idea of balance is in the choreography and in the body of the dancer.
The carvings depict nature settings and stories from the Hindu religion. Karu Das, the leader of the Utah Krishna sect, enjoys different aspects of the Hindu religion. Das operates the Krishna temple in Spanish Fork, Utah, familiar to many Utah residents because of the Festival of Colors.
Everybody throws 25,000 bags of colors. You're not going to be able to see, and you're not even going to be able to breathe for a little while. And next Wednesday...
Temple members and guests celebrate the coming of spring by throwing multicolored chalk at each other and into the air.
4, 3, 2, 1!
While their traditions may differ from those in Bali, Das says that those religious stories etched on both sides of the gamelan are probably the most well-known stories in the Hindu world.
For all time, there isn't any higher, more shining emblem of virtue than Ram. And the whole cultures, whole nations, tens of millions of people have drawn their inspiration towards a path of higher consciousness and virtue on the strength of the example that Ram set about in the Ramayana. There's no way you can underestimate the power for good that the story of the Ramayana has wrought for thousands and thousands of years.
On one side, they teach animal fables from the Panchatantra that always teach moral principles. One story is about Pride, told through a turtle's misfortune. He lived near a dried-up lake and asked his bird friends to help him.
When you relocate, you could take me with you by putting a stick between your beaks, and I'll just hold on to it. And then you could take me with you.
The birds agreed and warned him not to let go. But when the humans standing below them yelled how intelligent the birds were, the turtle became angry.
Unable to resist taking credit for his idea, he opened his mouth to tell them that, hey, this is all my idea. And then you can just imagine the rest. So this is a story, the moral of which is don't get too puffed up.
On this side, they carve narratives from the Hindu scripture, the Ramayana, the writings that guide daily life for many.
Any country in which the Ramayana is told and sung and repeated, when people are inconvenienced, even up to the point of disease and death and war and famine, rather than lashing back reflexively and destructively, they stop a moment and they think, well, what would Ram have done in this circumstance? And what would Sita have done in this circumstance?
The pictures on the instruments tell stories. Even on a more fundamental level than that, in Balinese culture, there's a lot of value placed on decorating things, on making things beautiful, especially on filling up empty space.
The BYU gamelan has a unique carving on it, the recreation of the sunstone from the outside of the Navu temple.
So I consulted with Pa Asnawa a little bit about this, and he assured me that that the Balinese wouldn't find it offensive to put a little bit of Mormon iconography on the instruments.
In the original sunstone designed by Joseph Smith, the hands at the top held trumpets, representing the coming of Christ. But Bali doesn't have trumpets, so the designers filled the hands with mallets used to play the gamelan. Once they finish the carvings, the delicate layering process of tuning begins.
In Balinese music, they use a couple of different tuning systems that draw on that infinite variety of pitches that we just don't have in the Western system. So that immediately strikes the ear as very different.
Iwayan Barata is considered to be one of the premier gamelan crafters in Bali. It takes him at least 6 months to finish a gamelan set.
The process that he goes through is a very elaborate one, where he tunes kind of the middle range instruments in pairs, and then he expands out and tunes the higher ones, and then the lower ones, and then the higher ones, and then the lower ones, and then everything's being tweaked along the way by the tuners and craftsmen.
The tuning is particular to each set of instruments. Each instrument is tuned slightly off to the one next to it. The tuners can use up to 4 different tuning systems within a gamelan like this one. The combination allows for each set to have an original sound.
The way gamelan music works, at least most gamelan music, is you have instruments in different octaves or different ranges. You have some low instruments, you have some high instruments, and then you have some instruments in the middle.
The differing octaves and ranges make for the complex, distinct, and unusual melodies that are the cornerstones for making and playing gamelan music.
The way the music works is everyone's kind of playing the same melody. The same melody is sort of floating there underneath all of the parts.
Each of the instruments plays a certain set of notes. The bass metallophones start. They play a slow, simple version of the melody. Then,
the next instruments up play those same notes, but they fill in some notes in between. And then you go up to the next range of instruments, and they fill all of those notes. They play all of those notes, but then they fill in some more notes. And then when you get to the top set of instruments, they're doing the most elaborate version of this core melody. But they're all kind of following the same general contour.
this complex process of layering the music takes many years to learn, but these impressive musicians, I Ketut Gede Asnawa and Iwayan Barata, have mastered this intrinsic art of tuning and playing. They took some time on a warm afternoon to perform the music they love.
It was really an honor to see Pa Asnawa and Pa Barata playing drums together. That was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing.
After waiting for 2 months for the gamelan to arrive in Utah, Grimshaw and the students unloaded the 30 pieces in less than 3 hours. The gamelan that was handcrafted halfway across the world now sits here in a classroom in the Harris Fine Arts Center at BYU. Here, Professor Grimshaw teaches those outside the Indonesian culture to play and appreciate this ancestral music.
Anybody that's willing to put in the effort can learn how to do, regardless of whether they've had musical training before.
And the students are learning to do just that in a new music class offered at BYU.
The first day, no one had ever played gamelan, so we're all just kind of like, how do we do this? Like, you hit it how?
The beginning is just going to go pat boom, okay? There's going to be 2 of those, pat boog, pak. All right, and then 6 low drum strokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, gong.
It's been interesting to see the reaction of people when they see me, when they hear, like, they ask me what classes I'm in, and they're expecting, like, fluid mechanics, you know, instrumentation, but when I tell them I'm in gamelan, they're like, what is that? You're in a music class? Why? I'm like, I like it.
BYU purchased a gamelan in order to bring more diversity to its music curriculum and to the global profile of the university.
I think it really goes along with like the culture of BYU, because BYU, maybe not in student body, but in practice, we're very ethnically, culturally well-rounded, because we have missionaries, returned missionaries from all over the world, and people who like to get involved in different cultures. And then we do also have a lot of people from different countries who come here.
Well, there are a lot of colleges that have gamelan, but it's not like every college has one. Especially with someone like Dr. Grimshaw, who just knows so much and knows all these tunes. It's a fantastic opportunity here at BYU that I just wish more people knew about it.
And for most students, playing the gamelan is as foreign to them as the country it originated in.
I've played trumpet for 12 years, and playing in orchestras is fun, but this is just so neat. It's something completely different, something I've never done.
First when we started playing them, it's kind of like, well, that's kind of weird because they tune them all slightly off, so you get that shimmer and that ring. And at first, it took some getting used to, because at first it was a little, it kind of hurt the ears a little bit because they're not used to it.
And the different tuning styles simply fascinate the students.
But then when we get everything together, to me, it kind of sounds just like a bunch of pots and pans in the kitchen, and so it's a harder thing to get used to because they mismatch their tuning on purpose. So like everything that you try to avoid in Western music, like trying to be totally on tune in a choir and stuff, they go just off on purpose, so they get those like discordant waves, and that's what's beautiful to them. So it's just a different idea, I guess, if you're raised on a different idea of what beautiful is.
Trying something different has been a challenge for some of them.
But we're all starting to get the technique down a little better of how you hit it, how you dampen the notes, and then you just kind of start to get a feel for how you move around the instrument, and so it starts to make a lot more sense. You can start picking out patterns.
But Grimshaw says the students are exceeding his expectations.
It's really gratifying to see this music, in its traditional context on the other side of the world, literally, and then come back here to Provo, and these BYU students are just eating it up.
And after months of rehearsing and applying the Balinese culture to their own lives, the BYU students are ready for their debut.
We are Gamelan Bintang Wahyu. We're the first Balinese gamelan or percussion orchestra at BYU, and as far as I know, in Utah. So we're very excited to be here. We think of this as kind of a historic occasion for us anyway. So thanks for sharing it with us.
I didn't expect that BYU would have something Indonesian, and so it was really exciting, and to be able to be in touch with my culture, especially because I'm far away, and sometimes you miss home, but with some kind of Indonesian around here, it really helps.
Getting involved into something that is sort of a part of, my ethnic tradition, though my father isn't specifically from Bali, but from Indonesia itself, where people value, the beauty and just the gracefulness of everything in life. It's really beneficial, and allows me to take a step back and see what do I really value. Do I find the beauty in everything that I do, in every note that I play? Is that, important and beautiful in my life?
I think we have a long way to go before we can play like some of those groups that are over there. I think there's probably groups of 8-year-olds that could play better than us, just because that's their culture and that they've been learning that for a long time. But I think we're doing pretty good, and for the most part, I don't think anybody in the audience is going to be able to tell. I think they're going to like it anyway. So.
one of the most valuable things that gamelan teaches students here at BYU is that there's a way to make art, the enterprise of making art, that in itself can be a devotional thing.
The students of BYU will continue to give harmonious offerings to God as they strive to learn and share with those around them the music of Bali.